Okay, here we go. Now the easy part here, the work. Converting degrees to radians. Okay, so we know the unit relationship, right? The unit relationship, or the relationship between these two units. No, where is it? Here it is. Unit relationship. That was in the first two videos that I explained. What do I mean? What's the relationship between degrees and radius? Well, we said that 360 degrees is the same thing as 2 pi. You can use that, 2 pi radians, but again, remember, a lot of people don't write radians. How does this look like this? Or we can use what? Or we can use, remember, divide by 2, we can say, much easier to use, 180 is equal to what? 1 pi radian. Pi is equal to 180, or 1 pi radian, right? RAD is short for radians. This is the one you're going to use. This one. Okay, so let's start right here. Number 1, 60 degrees. 60 degrees is the same as how many radians? Well, what you're going to do is this. You're going to convert. You're going to start with 60 degrees, put over 1, and then times. Now, how are you going to use this fact that 180 degrees is equal to pi radians? Well, you're going to use another fraction, right? And since degrees are on top here, we don't want degrees also on top here. We want them in the bottom. That way they can divide out. They can cancel out. The degrees will cancel out. If this one's on top, the other one has to be in the bottom. And then this is what? Pi, right? 180 is equal to pi radians, so we use it as a fraction like this. And then what happens next is, well, I already said, I'm going to just write it over so that it doesn't get too sloppy. I'll write radians here, but later for short, you just need RAD. Right, the degrees will cancel out. The degrees cancel out, and then here you can see to reduce, look to reduce. The degrees cancel, and then you look to reduce. 60 can go into 60, and 60 can go into 180. So that's going to be, well, you know what, I'll take it, I'll put this together and I'll reduce later. I got 60 times pi, or 60 pi radians, over 180. And remember, the degrees already are gone, so these are just numbers now. Now you can reduce 60 and 180 by 60. You can cancel the zeros first and then reduce 6 and 18. Either way, you're just going to get 1, 3. So your answer is pi over 3 radians. So 60 degrees is equal to pi over 3. All right, we started at 60 degrees and you converted it into radians, so it's pi over 3. All right, let's do another one. Number 2. About 240 degrees. Let's convert that to radians. How do we do that again? Okay, so you put 240 degrees over 1, and then you're going to multiply it to another fraction, which is, again, using your conversion unit, this relationship that we know. Since degrees are on top, we want the degrees here on the bottom, and then the pi radians go on top. What happens from there? Well, these divide out. Like if you had 5 over 5, or well, degrees over degrees, these will divide out. I'm left with this. 240 pi radians over 180. Let's see, now these numbers can reduce. Well, I'll take the zeros out first, right? Divide by 10, divide by 10. I'm left with 24 over 18. That I can divide by 6. 6 goes into 24, and 6 goes into 18, so that'll be 6 times 4 and 6 times 3. Your final answer, 240, is the same thing as 4 pi over 3 radians. But short for radians is RAD, radians. Okay, number 3. What about a negative 225 degrees? That's negative 225 degrees over 1 times. What was that conversion relationship? Well, that was 180 degrees is 1 pi radian, right? The degrees are gone, so we have no more degrees, or just numbers. I got negative 225 times pi radians, or negative 225 pi radians in the top in the numerator, over what, 180? And these, I'm going to give you a hint. Sometimes they're reduced by 30 or 10s or 5s, but when you see something like this, it reduces by 45. Reduced by 45. You'll see 45. A 45 degree is a very popular number for degrees and radians. Reduced by 45. Well, I'll just tell you what it is. Got the pi, I got the radians. That's going to stay. 225 happens to be 45 times 5. And 180 happens to be 45 times 4. And the 45 divided by 45, well, that's going to divide out. Your final answer here, you got this negative still, you got in the numerator negative 5 pi radians, negative 5 pi over 4 radians. That's your answer. All right. Now let's go the other way. It's going to be very similar. What do I mean go the other way? Now, what if you start with a radian and you're going to convert it to degrees? So convert what? Convert radians to what? Degrees. How do we convert from radians to degrees? Number 1. What if if I've got to start with a radian, what if I start with pi over 6? How would I convert that to degrees? Well, I got pi over 6 times. Again, you're going to use that same conversion unit. We're still going to use what? What was that unit? 180 degrees is equal to 1 pi radian. Remember that? But here in this case, you have pi on the top. So guess what? We're going to have to use what? If this pi is on the top, that means this pi radian is in the bottom. And then the 180 comes on top. Yeah? Then very simply, what's going to happen? Well, the pi's will cancel out. They'll divide out. You're left with, what is it? You're left with 180 degrees divided by 6. 180 degrees divided by 6. You will have 30 degrees. Number 2, let's do another one. About 3 pi over 10. How do you change this into degrees? All right, well, very similarly, 3 pi over 10 is what is given. I got a fraction. Now I'm going to use my conversion unit, which this pi is here, so this pi has to be down here so they can cancel, and pi is equal to what? 180 degrees. The radians, the pi's will divide out and cancel each other out. And here I recommend that you don't multiply 3 times 180 and then the 10 here. Just let's keep the numbers. 3 times 180 degrees divided by 10. The 10 and the 180 can reduce. So you're left with what? The zeros cancel out, or you're left with 3 times 18 degrees. Right, because the zeros, 180 divided by 10 is 18 degrees. So this one would be 54 degrees. Okay, number 3. Negative 3 pi over 4. How do I convert that to degrees? Well, the negative is just going to go for the right. The rest is the math, right? It's going to be negative 3 pi over 4 times our conversion relationship here that we've been talking about. If pi is here, then this pi goes down there. And pi is equal to 180. Those divide out. You're left with negative 3 times 180 degrees divided by 4. Again, don't multiply this and get a bigger number. The 4 can divide the 180. That's going to give you 180 divided by 4 is 45. So that's going to be negative 3 times 45 degrees. Your answer is going to be negative 145 degrees. All right, there you go. Good luck.